the creative process, you mentioned, you've had everything from sketch pads to your computer to this. I mean, there's people that express creativity in so many ways. Now, one place I think it can be daunting is, a lot of times when you hear subject matter experts talk about their process, it seems very routinized. It seems like they have the perfect, everything is laid out. Can you give me something, despite all your years of experience, that is still incredibly messy of yours? Something that you just feel like, oh my God, if anybody saw this, right, they would think I'm a madman. What is your creative process like in some respects like that?
Yeah, well, when I started to manage larger teams in the early 2000s, I became known for sketching on small yellow stickies because it was the fastest way I could get my idea across. And I would just leave, so it'd just be yellow stickies everywhere, right? And so my point is, part of why I was doing that is I want to demonstrate to my team that it wasn't about perfection. There was nothing about my sketches on those, matchbook sized pieces of yellow paper that was frameable, museum worthy. It's like, let's be raw, let's be fast about it, let's ideate, and let's have a conversation through sketching, but let me lead the way in trying to develop a culture where we weren't going to get wrapped up, at least initially, with glittering renderings and animations and different things like that. And so that's just maybe one example of oftentimes that, because I do believe just, two of my favorite characteristics in sports, speed and agility, I think are enormously important in the world of business organizations, right? To be able to move and listen and respond and flex and be agile to the wants and needs of your audience, and at the same time do it at warp speed.
Yeah,
like no one's waiting for us.
No.
Consumer speed is really fast right now, and you need to keep up or be in front of that. So I have deep sympathy and empathy for the teams, really, really deep into the digital offense that they run to drive that. But in any event, yeah, I mean, that's just one example maybe that is, quite frankly, something that anyone can do that.
Yeah, I think
that's yellow sticky example.
That's perfect. And talking to a coach, they had spent the majority of their life in team sport, and they were now moving into an entrepreneurial role, and they just overthink so many of these things. And I told them, listen, your athletes, of course, they practice, they do this, they drill, but you don't tell them just to overthink everything. They got to go out in the game and they got to do it. And that's why you mentioned speed and agility. And from a communication standpoint, we always call it social agility. I'm like, but you've just got to continue to iterate these things. And it's funny, I've always thought coaching and entrepreneurship go hand in hand. There's the inherent management tropes. There's the game planning aspect, or in sports performance, periodization and all these pieces. But it brought me to the next question, getting out of creativity for a moment. On page 127, and the subtitle is A New Position and New Offense. And it talks about when you took the role of vice president of global brand creative at Nike in 2010. Now, you don't have to use this example, Greg. You can use any example, a lateral example. I understand we want to protect privacy and all this. But one question that we had gotten is somebody that just took a new role, said, I came into a position, very excited about it, love the organization. However, as with any organizations, there are some individuals who, and they phrase it, seem to lack ambition or a central purpose. And just, I'm having a bit of trouble getting them to buy in and deliver the engagement, autonomy, and more importantly, accountability I need them to. You can use any example you want, but can you share some experience from your life of what you did to kind of solve what might be an accountability or an ambition or a focus problem when managing a new team?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll say this, even before that time, remember, I was a Nike design intern. And then 7 years later, I was leading the very department that I was an intern for.
Right.
And you can imagine maybe the resentment, there's a lot that I was dealing with as I tried to find my own way of leading, but also motivate people to kind of redefine how we worked, to deliver better works. And so that's just one thing, is I understand where the person's coming from, because I dealt with it over and over again. And some of it you can coach and lead through. And some of the other stuff is, it unfortunately is a distraction for the team. But if I fast forward, yes, I inherited a variety of disciplines and functions that had worked in some ways in isolation or in silos, brand communication and advertising, social media and digital marketing, the brand design studio, and all the events and retail, all these different places, right? And my job was to somehow create continuity and consistency with what we were creating, because at the end of the day, more and more the consumer was just demanding it. Like, the last thing your audience wants to deal with are excuses that you have issues internally and therefore you can't connect the dots for them.
Right.
Like, that's the, so, because at the end of the day, your audience decides. They're actually in charge, and your job is to deliver. So yes, I mean, you to me, here's the thing I preached a lot, that from day one, anytime I assumed a new role and I would sit down with all the groups, and maybe there's a lot of cynicism in the room, maybe not, but it's like, we need an equal balance of self-confidence and self-awareness. Right.
Great.
If we have an imbalance there, there's no way we're going to be able to play together on a field. And you've heard this before, but at least the mantra I use is, talent starts the game, but chemistry wins it. Just like some of the all-star teams you see, it's not always fun to watch.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the chemistry isn't there. So you can have the greatest team in the world in the realm of business, but if you can't create that chemistry and that a buy-in to selflessness, then it's going to be really difficult. And that's why I always use the FC Barcelona example, when they are at their peak and they practice that playing style tiki-taka, and they would pass the ball 40, 50, 60 times in a row, and the opponent wouldn't touch it. And that's at the highest level of football.
Yeah.
And so there's only one way to achieve that. And if that's, again, where everybody knows their role on the team, but also there's a level of self-awareness and selflessness that exists in pursuit of the bigger goal. And so that's why it sounds a little, but I do use this term, shorten your passes. Because if you're doing these long handoffs and these long passes between departments and between teammates in the world of business, you're just not going to generate that level of speed and continuity that I think you need today.